Welcome back to Bread and Butter, where we are serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement. This is episode 130. As always, I'm joined by Pylet. Pylet, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And today, our guest is Jay Alexander. Jay Alexander, how are you today?
Doing fine. Had a nice evening. Looking forward to taking care of this and getting back to some games at some point, probably tomorrow.
Fair enough. And it's a new Battleground day, so I'm sure Pylet and I might play some duos after this since we're starting early enough. Today's topic is about mindset, and looking forward to talk about that. That's a topic that Jay Alexander is very familiar with and talks a lot about. So, Mr. Alexander, what have you been doing inside the game of Hearthstone lately?
I have mostly been waiting, looking forward to that day that the Ungoro expansion comes out. But until that point, I've been playing a bunch of Cycle Rogue. Sent my little farewell to that deck today. Haven't tested it since, so not sure if it'll still be surviving, but made sure I could play it while I got the chance. Got some Starship games in. Always a fan of that. Hoping that manages to stick around for a while. And then beyond that, just dipping my toes into seeing how things feel after the patch. Can't say I have a lot of time behind that yet, but that's going to be most of the rest of the week.
I mean, to be fair, Rogue always seems to find a way to survive. It just always seems that has got the alligator blood. It always seems to be hanging around.
Yeah, I'm not concerned that there won't be decks that I can find playable. I was just really looking forward to some new experiences, and hopefully we can get those back on the radar soon.
Yeah, we'll be questing for those at some point, I'm sure. Pylet, what have you been doing inside of the world of Hearthstone?
The past few days, not too much. Haven't really played, I think, at all since the month rolled over, partly just because I've been busy and distracted with other things. I did finally finish the late Legend climb right after we recorded last week. Decided that I needed to play some Starship DK because I was probably bringing it for THL, and went a slow 9-0 to Legend, and that also got me to 500 DK wins. So it's a good deck. It's normally not one that I like playing, but I was enjoying it more than I thought until I ran into mirrors, and that experience is miserable. Speaking of which, that was my THL match last week. It took 2 hours for 4 games because we were both playing a control heavy lineup, and one of those was the Starship mirror. So I'll be glad when there are some options outside of those, but that's kind of what I felt was best last week. We'll see what happens this week, but that's kind of where I'm at with the game.
Well, you have an easy opponent this week, right?
Yeah, so somebody named McBanterface.
Yep, nope. I think you'll win that 3-0. I will also win mine 3-0 against somebody named Sunk. I don't know how to say his name. Is it Sunk Q or Sunk?
Sunk, as far as I know.
I think that's right.
All right, yeah. So I'm looking forward to that match. And I have been doing a mix of things. I am climbing. So while I have the opportunity to climbing, I'm playing bad decks. And I'm still playing Cinder Shaman, which is so much fun. It's just not consistently good enough. At least with the version I built. Maybe there's something out there. Maybe there will be something out there after the patch. But outside of that, as I've mentioned, I've been taking coachings from I almost said McBeneface from Language Hacker, and unlike Pylet, he liked most of the plays I made in THL last week. I took my series in 5, and I did have some plot armor in a couple games where I won some favorable brawls and whatnot, but we played well and we came out on top. Mostly a control lineup as well, which is again weird for me. I was just talking about this last night, is I don't like control because it does feel like, hey, I've been playing for 4 hours. I've played 6 games and I've went 3-2 and I've made 0 progress. But when lately when I've been playing, like we've been playing Starship Warlock, and that has done really well for me. I went like 8-1. And when I have those sessions when I'm 8-1 and 9-1, that feels a lot better. So maybe I'm coming around. I don't know. Mr. Alexander, what have you been doing outside of the game of Hearthstone?
I have been doing some miniature painting. Always a nice relaxing time to just sit down, toss on a podcast, a video, and apply endless layers of thinned down paints on top of each other to create smooth transitions of color.
I I can't, like, I don't have any artistic ability whatsoever. So I don't think that would be very relaxing to me because I would just be getting frustrated at why this is coming out like a blob.
Yeah, no, losing your mind is actually part of the learning process for this. I don't know if I've gone through the first 20 models that I've painted recently without wishing I wasn't doing it and redoing it. And eventually it all comes together and you get it right and the process gets smoother over time. But yeah, that's definitely part of the process.
Fair enough. How about yourself, Pilot? What have you been up to?
I for gaming, I finished up Donkey Kong Bonanza last week. Hit credits on that. The last section of that, kind of the last world, was a lot of fun, a lot of variety. So very enjoyable game. And then finally jumped in and started Blueprints afterwards. Went in as blind as I could for how many people have been talking about it in Discords where a bunch of us play the same types of games outside of Hearthstone. And definitely learned very quickly that I need to plan ahead a lot more. I blocked myself in with my rooms and then learned to pay attention to doors a little bit better. I went and was playing a little bit before we were recording. I'm like, I've got time to get like half a run in here, and 8 rooms in, I blocked myself into a corner just because I couldn't find anything that I liked. I'm like, okay, I need to do something else. And then it's like, oh, we have a podcast to record. Great. So trying to get in some of those types of games before school starts up. And then this weekend competed in some set champs for Lorcana. This was my first set that I've been playing enough and have, kind of competed in those. Had a good time. Some varied success. I went to one on Saturday where I was able to just barely squeak out top 8. So I got the top 8 card for that and got the fancy cardboard that I was looking for. And then Sunday took the same deck and went promptly 0-3 and dropped. And that's how card games go sometimes. But really enjoying that, and now just kind of looking forward to the new set and rotation at the end of the month for that.
And for anybody out there, do not make the same mistake I did. It's Prince, Prince, not Prince, Prints. There's other games out there, but that's not the game. I was looking, I'm like, none of these sound like the game everyone's talking about. So just make sure you get that right. I did some yard work. Last few weeks I've been doing yard work because it rained for like the first 7 months of the year on Saturdays. So anytime I went home, I couldn't do the work I did. And now I feel like I'm just far behind. And it's getting to the point where I'm like, I'm not getting everything done I want to get done. So what do I need to get done into the fall? Because we're getting close to fall. It's already, we're in August already. So the pumpkin beers are already out there. The Oktoberfest is probably not far behind. So let's go. Outside of that, not much, just, day-to-day things. But Pilot, I think we have some news this week.
Yes, we do have some news here. We have the 0.2 patch that we discussed a little bit last week when we had the info about the new Battleground season. So that is live with new keyword, huge minion refresh. We discussed that last week. You can listen back to there or refer to the patch notes for that. We also got some standard balance changes. I don't want to say surprising, but they kind of are because we normally don't get them in this patch. But they did a couple of changes here where they nerfed Playhouse Giant from 20 to 25 mana, and then Cursed Catacombs now discovers another card, not just a minion. And then they did a couple of buffs / changes, I'm going to say, for the DK, or not DK, Demon Hunter one. The Mage Quest Forbidden Sequence, the requirement was reduced from Discover 8 to Discover 7 cards. There's no change in the reward there. And then Demon Hunter, they changed the quest reward to where now, once you play Garashi Colossus, the 2 damage, doing an extra 2 now happens on both turns. You still have to do 2 damage on your turn to tick the quest and progress, but once you play the reward, it will happen on both players' turns. That was because of a mismatch with what the text on the card said compared to how it was playing. So they decided to change the gameplay to match the text rather than the other way around. And because of that, it buffed the card. So I haven't played any today to see how much change that has had, but I think we're kind of still in a waiting period before a bigger balance patch happens, other than the nerfs that happen.
I am. I think they need to do it so that way the quest ticks on both sides too, because otherwise I still don't think it's going to be playable. Or I maybe you raise up how long it takes.
Probably have to raise it
I don't
again
know.
if you do
I think it's
The Demon Hunter quest rate, I want to say the win rate was sitting at 35-40% range with patch.
It's still really bad.
I believe they call that on the VS report below whizbang. Isn't it the model right now? It's like either below or above whizbang. So, Mr. Alexander, what do you think about the patch? Is it a good patch, bad patch?
Well, the buff to the mage quest, I think, is it's a smart move. I don't know that it does quite enough, but I think that's a deck people really would enjoy playing if it can get to a somewhat competitive level, somewhere in the range of, 48 to 52%. I think people would really enjoy that. They've tended to enjoy a lot of Burgle-style decks in the past, and this is more in that vein. The Demon Hunter quest, I severely doubt that goes far enough. It's just noise, I think, at the moment. As for the nerfs, it's not unexpected, of course, to see the change to the Warlock deck in some capacity. The Dorian play experience, understandably, wasn't the greatest. Just that one play they could make that was so far above curve basically drove a bunch of people to madness, and so they were going to make some change to this. And the question was, are they going to change Dorian, or are they going to change something else about the interaction? Looks like they went with something else about the interaction. That I don't love, just because Dorian, if it's going to pop its head up again, is going to do the exact same thing again. And so I would rather let the new card be new and unchanged for a while and let people play around with that. And just do something to slaughter the Dorian, maybe 7 or 8 mana.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, the Giant nerf also was not unexpected, because the Cycle Rogue deck, especially at Top Legend, was picking up in win rate and play rate, and there's always another balance patch. Things will always get nerfed. It wasn't surprising. I don't know how it's going to feel after I play it. I know 5 additional cards is going to push your average Giant back probably at least a turn, and that deck can suffer a lot if you push its power spike back a turn. So I'm kind of iffy on it. As always, I'm going to wait and see. Maybe you can take out Giant and replace it with something else. I doubt Red Giant is going to be that thing. But I don't know, maybe you can go into a more spell damage Oracle route again. Maybe Playhouse Giant is still fine. I'm just not holding my breath on it. So, for me personally, the patch, it might have taken away something I'd enjoyed doing, but it didn't give me back something I really feel like I want to do. So, personally, it feels like a rough trade.
That's fair. And we have to know what's the name of your cat, because apparently they also have very strong opinions on the patch.
Yeah, that's Kitty. She has a lot to say. I will do my best to will her to be quiet to the best of my abilities.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We are pet friendly here, so you don't have to worry about that. And also, I like to petition that we rename the Demon Hunter class Demon Hunter, because that's what everybody says always, unless your name is Draco Cat. Like, that's what you call the class. So
I have the same issue, because they released 2 new classes, both of them 2 words, both of them start with a D. And
yep.
For some reason, my brain just always replaces Death Knight with Demon Hunter. Never does the reverse.
Nope, we do it here all the time. And it's just because reasons, I guess. I don't know. It just works that way. I think we have a little bit more news, Pylet.
Yeah. I do want to chime in with the balance patch. I think the Spell Quest Mage is one that I'm interested to see where that feels with the 1 less cost. I did run into quite a few times where I had the mana to play the reward, but I still needed 1 Discover, to where there's a chance that some of those games where you really hit like the Tide Pools, that does bring it at least let you equip the weapon a turn before or at the end of the turn and kind of get that online a little bit smoother. I don't know if it makes it any better, but it might smooth that out just a smidge and kind of give you some more options with that. So that one felt not great, not consistent, but close enough to where you could talk yourself into playing it, which is a low bar, but that's kind of where the quests are at. So interested to see where that falls. For other news, we did get some news finally regarding the community manager side of things, where Alkali is back as senior community manager. So that was announced last week.
Technically, I think it's influence manager.
Correct.
Okay. I was trying to look it up, and then the one that I saw said community manager, but I didn't get a chance to double check if that one was correct. So thank you for that.
You'd have to be on Twitter.
So
and you'd figure that out.
Well, that's where I went, but I was also trying to scroll back 5 days of other tweets. So yes. So either way, Alkali is back in that realm. So she was on before as a community manager, was one of the ones who helped start up the creator program, and is back on the team.
And I think this is the only move that they could have made without bringing Hat back that wouldn't have been complete uproar, because everyone's like we all wanted to be mad, and this is probably the last time we're going to talk about Hat, because I know he doesn't want to make a big deal out of it, but we were all ready to be mad, and then it was like, oh, Alkali, we like Alkali. So they should have kept them both. They should have hired Alkali, kept Hat. Obviously, they have the money to do it. We all help with that. It's stupid. But Alkali is already out there working, already kind of engaging. If you're a content creator and you're like looking to, I don't know, get some influence from the influence manager or whatnot, give her time. She just started. She's wrapping her head probably around a big mess. She came into like kind of a mess as far as people that were invited to the battleground thing to participate on Friday. I know some people were unhappy that some people were and some people weren't. That's always going to happen, especially when probably somebody was pulled in from another team to kind of fill in until that happened. So I thought she was going to catch more Hat strays than she does so far. Like, I haven't seen anything. Everyone's kind of like, Hat, but Alkali. So I think it's okay. What do you think there, Mr. J. Alexander?
Well, I've actually interacted with both of these people a bunch. I interacted with Alkali when she started up the creator program, and before that, frankly, and I have nothing but positive things to say about her. And that is in the context of her actually removing me from the creator program. So that lets you know that she does really good work. I don't have a bad word to say about her. Everything she's done, I think, is great. And I've also spent a lot of time with Hat, interacting with him on various Discords, seen him perform in his role. I don't have a bad thing to say about Hat either. They're both fantastic at their job. They both communicate very well. They're passionate. They're knowledgeable. Hat's persuaded me about things before, even in some discussions. I think you really can't go wrong with this position. It's unfortunate, of course, that it's hard to persuade a company to say, we like both of these people so much, we would like you to make a second, potentially redundant role so that you can get both of these people on the payroll. But it's hard to go wrong with either person.
Well, to be fair, they had hired Hat to help out Alkali initially, and the only reason they weren't both still there was because Alkali went and took a different position somewhere at a different company. So, like, there's plenty of work there from what it sounds like, so they could have made it happen. They just, as typical when when somebody loses a job or leaves a job, then usually the underlings end up having to absorb that, and they say, yeah, we'll eventually replace it, and they don't, and then you end up having multiple hats. No pun intended. So, yeah, I agree with you, but I think they could make it happen.
Oh, they definitely could.
Well, any other thoughts on that before we move on? Because I think it's time to get to know J. Alexander here. What do you like to be called, by the way? Because do you like to be called by your full name, J. Alexander III? What?
J is fine, J. Alexander's fine, Jesse is fine, any of it works. J is probably easier on the tongue.
All right, you sound a little bit to me like, I think it's, what's his name, James Spader, David Spader, the guy that played Ultron, and he was like a lawyer on some TV shows and stuff.
I'll take Ultron.
Yeah, you got kind of that same, I think you have the same kind of cadence and voice and stuff, so I can hear it. But anyway, so how did you get started in gaming, and how did you find Hearthstone?
when it comes to gaming, I'm a little bit on the ancient side. To give some context for what I mean there, like most young boys, maybe I shouldn't say most, but like a lot of young boys, when I was growing up, I was big into fantasy, dragons, swords, elves, magic, all that stuff. I was a huge fan of the Dragonlance novels. I spent a lot of time reading those when I was young, and this love of fantasy always made its way into my hobbies. So, when it came to video games, obviously, being a kid, I played a lot of Nintendo and up from there, but I also got into more of the fantasy side things on what was at the time called a MUD, multi-user dungeon. It's a text-based game, basically, a text-based RPG. And that's all. It's like playing a Word document. And I had a lot of fun playing that when I was young, and obviously the internet has come a long time since that point. But that was really where I was getting started. Also, of course, in Warhammer, spent some time collecting those models and painting them up. Again, just all that enjoyment for fantasy. In the realm of the more advanced games, I started playing a lot of EverQuest. I lost a couple years of my life to that, I would say. Had a great time. Wouldn't really trade it, but I definitely could have been doing some better things with my day. That's really why I never touched World of Warcraft. I knew how much the MMO took from me, and I wanted to do other things. But I was always playing some of the Blizzard games, the Diablos, the Warcrafts, the Starcrafts. I grew up with all of that. And then, of course, there was Magic, like a lot of other people who do card games. Hard to say when I got started in Magic. I want to say it was probably around Ice Age that I first saw it. Went over to a friend's house, and they were just playing cards on the table. And, they play like a Nightmare, a Gaia's Liege, Hill Giant, and I was just instantly captivated by the art on the cards and started playing that. Went out to a bunch of local card shops, met some people, learned to play over time, got some much-needed socialization as well. Met a lot of friends through these groups. It was fantastic. And I got pretty good at Magic. I was going to a lot of local tournaments. I was winning a bunch of the ones that I joined. And for anyone out there who was, I guess, currently or previously a Magic fan, a little bit of lore on that front is at my local shop, there were two other kids whose names you might remember, who were Reed and Ian Duke. And they were kind of our primary competition when it came to who was going to take home the prize each week. And, they went on to Magic Pro Tour and work doing card design in some capacity for Wizards, I believe. But eventually I just stopped playing Magic, stopped playing EverQuest, went to college. And from there I was playing a variety of different games. This was when the GameFly subscription model was new on the scene. You would have games mailed to you, and then you would mail them back, and they would mail you new games. This was, I guess, a little bit before some of the streaming came around, and I got really into Dark Souls at that point. And I was playing Dark Souls for a variety of years. I was really invested in that. And then right around the time of Dark Souls 2, as I was leaving my graduate program out in New Mexico, went over to a friend's house one night, and she showed me Hearthstone. And I just sat down, and I was instantly engaged with the game. All the art and the animations, the music, how alive the whole thing felt. It really made me want to keep playing this, so I went home, I made my own account. And when I started playing Hearthstone, I was playing a minigame in Hearthstone, which I'm sure many people are familiar with, which is the free-to-play minigame. Because I know I'm signing up for Hearthstone. This is a free-to-play game, and I knew what free-to-play meant at the time, which was very expensive. So I wanted to try and effectively beat the system, resist the urge to make any purchases, and I knew they were going to try and encourage me to do that, though Hearthstone, to its credit at the time, did that a lot less than most. And I just kept playing this for a while, was really building up my collection slowly, bit by bit, got a lot of joy from that. I would spend time just sitting, looking at the cards, always engrossed in that little fantasy world they had. And really, what probably cemented it for me more than anything else is when I was driving back home from New Mexico across the country. It was about, I want to say, 26 collective hours in the car. So I'm just sitting there for 3 days, 8-ish hours at a time, straight burn, with the cat screaming in the back seat. She does not like the car. And I can't really stop to do very much outside of occasionally get some food at a drive-through. And after 8 hours on the road, I'm just toast. So I get into a hotel room at the end of the day, I lay down, I flip open my laptop, I toss on a stream, be it Trump or Raynad or whoever else was streaming at the time. I'd pop Hearthstone on my phone, and I would just sit there, and the sense of relaxation that I got from playing this, and the joy that I got from playing it, lives as a very fond, nostalgic memory in my head to this day. And so that's really where it ended up cementing itself.
Yeah, I think you're about the same age as me, or maybe around that. I'm not calling you old.
I'm old.
I remember when Ice Age came out in the dark and whatnot, and I read the Dragonlance books and the Forgotten Realms, and I tried to read them when I was older. I was like, wow, I still like the stories, but the writing is not good.
It's not great.
Um,
I did the same.
Because I was like, oh, you know what? I found my Dragonlance books. I'm going to read them again, and then I was like, no, I'm out. I tried. So you said you like to watch Trump and everybody stream. How did you decide to start streaming?
Well, I was really into academics. When I was leaving New Mexico, I just kind of sort of finished up my PhD. I was in the tail end of it. And one thing I really, really love about the whole academic side of things was teaching. I love teaching more than almost anything. And the only problem with this is that teaching, by and large, not to say always, but by and large, pays peanuts. If you're trying to make a career out of this, you better enjoy doing a lot of work and living in your car from time to time. So I did teach some classes and had a blast doing it, but I never, at first, wanted to start streaming because I understood the very top-heavy nature of this endeavor, where the top 1% of streamers will get 80-90% of the views, and then the next 5% will get the next 10% of people, and everyone else is kind of streaming to themselves. And so I didn't really feel like playing those odds. But one day, the sister, she wanted to do a little bit of streaming, and supportive brother that I am, tossed together a computer for her, and figured, no, if I already got this streaming computer ready to go, I might as well give it a shot and just see how it went. And I loved it right from the start. The only real big challenge was trying to get people to come to the stream, because if no one knows who you are, no one is going to know who you are. So I had to do my best to let people know it existed, had to make some social media accounts, usually posted a bit on Reddit just to share some ideas and tell people effectively, hey, if you like what you read here, I'm at this stream over here, you can always drop by and chat there. And I was really trying to replicate that card shop experience that I so valued from when I was young, where you would just go and you'd hang out with your friends and play some games, and that was about it. And so I wanted to teach, I wanted to have that card game experience. Streaming melded the two really nicely. But it was never, and still, frankly, isn't something I've done for money. This is a bit of interesting information I've learned about myself. If you read about yourself online, sometimes you find out things you didn't know. Like, streaming is my livelihood. I didn't know this. But at my peak of making money off of streaming, I was probably getting about $1,200 a month for what is about 80 hours of streaming. If you do the math, it's not particularly impressive. And since that point, it's fallen quite a bit. I want to say these days, probably doing about $300 to $400 a month in terms of how much I'm making. Again, for about 80 hours, so do the math there. It doesn't sound very good. And I know that's largely because I don't do sponsored content, I don't click the ad button. It's just not something that's ever interested me. The money is nice, it's extra pocket change for doing something fun every now and again, but mostly I just want to hang out, play some video games, and have a fun hobby that I can share with a bunch of other people.
So one other thing you like to do is you like to stir the pot from time to time. Both on your streaming social media, you can be a little bold and direct, and some people like that, some people don't. In some ways, you've kind of built an entire brand about being a little bold, a little divisive, and you have very strong opinions often, and you rarely back down. You come and you do come with data usually to back up your point of view. But it is fair to say you're not for everyone. Um, but you still had a lot of success as a content creator. So do you think that that approach has helped with your growth, or do you think that's held you back in some ways?
I honestly never think about it very much. Your comments ring very true. My best friend has described me as having the personality of sandpaper, which I can completely understand. I don't really intend to be divisive. It's probably just whatever special brand of tism happens to live within me. I don't know what it is. One of those, you had to train yourself to make eye contact with people because that's a normal human thing. And it's not something I automatically picked up on. And I'm assuming with that territory, there are other social awarenesses that people think about more than I do. I just really like ideas. I really like getting deep into the details of whatever I'm studying. And I'm not sure if fixate is the right word, but once my mind latches onto an idea that it wants to explore, it really tries to attack it repeatedly from about every angle it can think of. And the ideas that I express, I wouldn't want to necessarily say that I have to express them because I don't, but it's more just that my mind has a thought, it circulates in my brain for a while, my brain doesn't let go of it until I actually express it to other people, and then I can more readily move on to the next thing.
What would you say to somebody that has already made up their mind about you from things people have said on Twitter or whatnot, about coming to see your content? Like, why should they kind of look past what they've already, like the opinion they formed on their own without any real interaction? What would you say to them about coming to consume what you do?
Well, first I would just say that I am not going to be for everyone. I don't think anyone can be for everyone, and if you don't like my particular brand of person, that's totally fine. I do not begrudge anyone for that. But I have had a couple comments to the effect of people that have showed up in my stream and said, more or less verbatim, I used to think you were kind of kept hanging out here for a while and you've really grown on me. So it does happen. But if someone doesn't want to make that leap and they got other things they want to be doing in their life, I should be pretty low on their list of priorities, honestly.
Do you ever feel like you've taken the topic too far? Do you ever think you maybe look back and said, maybe I should have reeled that in a little bit?
Oh, sure. I don't know that I have specific examples off the top of my head, but yeah, there have definitely been times. Oh, actually, I can think of one. There was, and this is a totally silly example, there was just one day where I was expecting there to be news about a Hearthstone patch, and there wasn't news about a patch that day. There usually was, but this time there wasn't, and for some reason, I had got that in my head that there should have been something. And I expressed that irritation publicly, and I was very effectively taken to task for that. I believe actually by Hat, of all people, where he's basically saying, well, why did you expect this? And then I realized, oh, yeah, no, that was very wrong of me to have expected this. I don't know what I was thinking. And since then, I have learned to effectively, when people ask, well, when is this coming? When is this happening? I've relaxed my entire attitude about that because of this one interaction, where now I say, the patch comes when the patch comes. We'll hear about it when we hear about it. Best not to think about it until that point.
I think it's no big secret that your favorite class is Rogue.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about Rogue that drew you in and kept you there?
The answer is very basic, which is that Valera looked really cool and the cards are black. And that really spoke to the inner goth kid in me. And from that point, I really love the gameplay that comes with it. Rogue has, I think, pretty unquestionably had some of the more interesting, unique, memorable skill testing decks throughout Hearthstone's history. And that scratches a certain itch with me. I love the gameplay, but really I just came for the aesthetics and stuck around because of the aesthetics.
That's, I believe, 30,000 games for the aesthetics.
No. If we're talking about games, I don't know exactly. I could pull it up, but right now we're talking about 51,500 wins.
Wow. I got my facts wrong. That is a lot.
I'm going to probably
you-
surpass 8 a lot within this year, and that'll be that.
Do you ever feel like because you're known as a rogue player that you're kind of like stuck playing rogue, or just because that's what your audience expects, or is it still just a joy?
No, it's just a joy. There have been some times where I haven't had something I've enjoyed, and something else was really speaking to me. The last instance was, I believe it was a Renathal Mill Druid, of all things. And I played that one a bunch, really loved the experience there. I've really enjoyed, this was before I was streaming, but I've really enjoyed something like Patron Warrior. I've played everything. It's just part of the reason I stopped playing other things is I don't have an incentive to anymore, because I got the portraits. And so there's just nothing left to unlock. So it's not that I dislike playing other classes, I just happen to like Rogue more, and getting back to that previous point briefly, my brain's fixation on certain things and really wanting to go into the details, and for whatever reason not get sick of doing it, just kicks into overdrive here, and it's a pleasure each time.
Now, do you think if they remove rogue from the game, you would play, like on stream at least, a variety of classes more often, or would you just pick another class to master?
I might play other classes, but I would probably just play less Hearthstone, because it would take away that thing of the game that I really like. And what you really need in the game is something you love. And if you don't have it, then, I can find other things if I really need to. I just don't know that I would feel the need to.
Very fair. That's a good mindset to have. And speaking of mindset, Pylet, what's our main topic tonight?
Yeah, so our main topic is going to be about mindset, and how we approach the game is what we're going to focus on today. We've had a few different episodes on mindset and a lot of different aspects to go with it. So instead of focusing on tilt or things like that like we have in the past, we're going to focus on how we approach the game, how we think about the game, and how that affects our mindset and our play experience. So I know, Jay, Alex, you wanted to say you had something that you wanted to talk about before we started jumping into the topic earlier.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a metaphor analogy guy, and I was thinking about this as I was preparing for our talk today. And I love Hearthstone. I've probably played it more than almost, if not actually, anybody on the planet. I write about it, I talk about it, and I really want other people to love it just as much, if not more than I do. That's really a lot of why I do what I do. And I know to some people it doesn't quite sound that way. A lot of it, though, it's just trying to share this passion and get other people interested in thinking about the game in a way that can cause them to love it more. That's why I stream. That's why I wrote that Hearthstone guide. That's why I tweet and I chat on Discord about it a lot. And there's a lot of players that I've noticed, and I've been one of these players myself in the past, that get in the way of their own fun. And there's a lot they can do to think about what they do, how they could change how they think, how they could change what they do, and they can really help themselves have more fun and find more fun in the game if they can just step out of their own way. So the analogy I was kind of thinking about here is, if you imagine the game of Hearthstone like the ocean, and you just have a bunch of people swimming around in it, these are our players. They're trying to have fun, they're trying to show off, they're trying to win swimming races, whatever they're trying to do. They're out there in the ocean, splashing around, having a good old time. You got the weak swimmers that are swimming in the shallow end with the other weak swimmers. You got the strong swimmers that start going out into deeper waters with the other strong swimmers. And all these strong swimmers did start out as weak ones, and there are ways of predictably building up your skills as a swimmer so you can move from the shallow waters to the deeper waters. And a lot of what I do and a lot of what you do at these podcasts is trying to help people go from point A to point B. How do you get from being a relatively weak swimmer to a relatively strong swimmer? But there's really more to enjoying the game than just being a good swimmer. And in this case, in our little example, everyone who's splashing around in this ocean of Hearthstone is doing something really strange, which is that they're carrying a sack of bricks with them while they're swimming around. This sack of bricks that we're all carrying, some of them are big, some of them are small, but we're all carrying them. They're real hindrances to our ability to swim. I'm assuming neither of you have ever tried swimming while you're holding a sack of bricks or any other heavy object.
No.
Yeah, because you would just sink. There's no point to do that. These things make it hard for people to swim. And for some people, this sack is just so heavy that it's basically dragging them under the water and they're drowning. They can't swim to the surface. They can't get a breath of fresh air. They can't find their joy in the game because they're struggling under the burden of this weight. So even if you're a very strong swimmer, sometimes you're just carrying this heavy baggage around and it's having that same effect. You're just drowning despite your ability to swim. So the more of these bricks that you're holding, you can't swim as far, you can't swim as long, you have a worse time swimming. And so what I'm trying to do, on top of teaching people how to be a better swimmer, is try to convince them to let go of this sack of bricks so they can have more fun when they're playing around in the ocean. And therein lies a bit of a large problem because the players love their sacks of bricks. I count myself in this. I love my particular sack of bricks. This is our psychological Hearthstone baggage. We all have misconceptions about what the game's purpose is. We might set up some pretty strict boundary conditions under which we allow ourselves to play the game and have fun. We start pursuing some lines of play that are making us lose games while we're thinking that we're doing the smart thing. And these mental blocks are keeping us stuck in these incorrect thoughts and behaviors. And in fact, if you try and talk to people about them, and you say, maybe you can let go of this sack of bricks and explore more of the swimming, they'll tell you they don't think they're holding on to a sack of bricks at all. They think this is just how you have fun. They think this is just part of the swimming experience. They're sitting down there on the ocean floor, they're breathing in salt water, they're anchored to this heavy sack of psychological baggage, and they won't let go of it because they say this is how they're having the most fun. So some players just really love this sack. And it's okay to carry those bricks if you actually are having more fun because of them. Of all people, I get that, because part of my psychological baggage is I really enjoy playing Rogue. This is a handicap. This is something that is holding me back. And it's okay if you want to do that if it makes you have more fun, so long as you go into this with both eyes open and you understand what you're doing. So if you can understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, you can really be enhancing your experience. But for some people, man, they get something in their head. It could be any number of things. Like, I'm not going to play this deck because that is a brainless aggro deck. I'm not going to play this class because that class is the enemy. They get something stuck in their head, and it is them standing in the way of their own enjoyment. So I want to help people both get better at the game, but also let go of all this baggage they're holding that is standing in their own way of actually having fun, whatever fun means to them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of them. That's what we'll focus on a lot today. I feel like most of what we're going to talk about is all the things that you think about before you even hit the launch game button.
To be fair, before we go on, the one thing that doesn't count for bricks is that Priest is the enemy, right?
Priest was actually my second favorite class when I first started playing. I loved the Alchemized Soul Priest, Circle of Healing, Northshire Cleric, Wild Pyro, Blade Master stuff. It just spoke to me.
Fair.
Yeah, it was fun.
So we're going to break this down into a couple different points here. First one, kind of what our expectations are when we're playing the game. And I definitely find, for me, I definitely play happier and have more fun when I know what my purpose is for that playing session. And that might be different each time. But what purpose are you playing for? Are you playing to learn a deck? Are you playing to meme and have fun? Are you playing to climb, which is sometimes dangerous? What is your purpose for playing during that time? And then a lot of times going hand in hand with that is, are you expecting to win? Obviously, it's a game where one person's going to win, one person is not. 99% of the time until you run into ties. But someone's going to lose. No one wants to lose, but what's kind of your expectations with that? So, Jay, kind of how do you typically approach the game when you're starting up?
Well, I will say, since I have started streaming, the stream is my main focus when I'm playing. And in this case, my purpose is to hang out to people, create an environment where we're just chatting, teach them about things. And because my focus is on those other goals, what happens within the game becomes a bit less of a problem. And it also helps, of course, if you have a bunch of people watching you, because you don't want to have a public crash out where you start screaming about what went wrong and slam the table. It makes for a good clip, but I don't think people end up thinking very highly of you after that. I will say having eyes on you definitely does help. I know a lot of people probably don't play Hearthstone in groups. That's one of the best parts about it. But if you can really figure out what it is you're trying to do and create some goal that extends beyond just win the game, and I think most people can do this, you put your attention on something other than the outcome. And there are many ways of having good experiences in those moments outside of what the frame of the outcome of the game was. Of course, winning is better than losing, and losing is not going to stop feeling bad. But that definitely does help. What would you say that you typically play these games for?
It's interesting because the way we just put this out, it made me think of that old expression. You can, if you're having something done, it's like you're hiring somebody to do something. You can have something done fast, cheaply, or well. You can pick two of those things, and I feel like that's kind of the same thing here. It's like you can play to win, you can play to have fun, and you can try to make Black Rock and Roll Warrior work. You can only make two of those things happen at the same time, and it's probably, you can't make all three happen. But yeah, my perception changes on what is my goal, because I've had goals of really trying to improve as a Hearthstone player and try to get myself to first I wanted to make it to 11 stars, which I've only done a couple times. And that was the goal. And then that kind of shifted to be, I want to be an 11-star player. I want to I don't want to think about it. It's just like, I'm good enough. I'm there. I'm doing that. And then I switch up and then I start playing, oh no, I want to play some fun decks that maybe I'm not so good at. Or maybe I want to I do really well when I fixate on one, Shadow Priest, I played 1,000 games in a month, and I got 11x. I did a lot of Pure Paladin. I love that deck, and when fun and experience kind of improvement went together, and that was good. But then I say, oh, I want to play this deck and this deck, and I'm like, I'm fine, I'm having fun, and I'm like, I just lost 5,000 ranks, and then I don't feel good about that. So it's hard for me to find because my expectations change. I have good times now where I'm just I just want to make it to Legend, play, have fun, do things, and get better at the game. And I think that's my ultimate goal, is I want to continually get better at the game and have fun. But sometimes I get in my own way.
Well, I actually really like that process that you described, because it highlights a bunch of things you can do. The first is that you don't start out with the expectation of, I just installed Hearthstone, I want to go be rank 1 Legend. It's, I want to get to this particular more achievable milestone. In this case, it was your 11-star bonus, but it could just be, I want to hit Diamond this season. I want to get Legend for the first time. Whatever your smaller, more bite-sized goal is. And then, of course, because we're humans, we can get used to basically anything. The first time I got Legend, I was shaking with excitement. I texted my friend. It was a huge deal. And now I get Legend, and that's Tuesday. That just is what it is. So it's not like our body reaches a goal and says, okay, that's great, I achieved my goal, I'm happy, and now I'm just going to sit here until I die, because I did the goal, I did the thing, I'm happy. No, you set your next goal. And in this case, your next goal was more mastery. You want to really learn the game and be really good at it unconsciously. And then once you know where the game, how it works, you have a good understanding of this functionality, then you start shifting over to, I want to express myself creatively now that I know how to use this tool. And knowing how to play Hearthstone well really helps with that creative expression. Because if you want to meme around, that's great if you have the skill set to understand how to make the meme happen. Because if you're playing a meme deck, it's probably not a great deck. And you need that extra bit of skill to actually get to the point where you do the fun thing in the first place. So first you learn to use the tool, then you learn to master the tool, then you started using this tool to express yourself. And occasionally, you fly too close to the sun, you play Black and Rock and Roll Warrior, you rank 5,000, these things happen. But understanding that you're doing that to yourself and for yourself, now that you already have this foundation in there, I think is a fantastic way to have gone about this.
Yeah, I agree. It's fun. It is, and it's also had some lore building, for just the things that we do. How about yourself, Pylet?
Yeah, I feel like I'm someone who, especially because I'm not someone who likes to play the same decks over and over unless it's a deck that very specifically, grabs my attention. My purpose for playing changes, but it's typically very focused on, I really want to learn this deck or this style of deck. So this is what I'm going to focus on this week. Wins, loss record, whatever. I'm going to figure this out a little bit better. Or I have this deck idea. I want to see if it has any legs. And again, then I know going into it that I cannot look at the record, and that's not the important part. And that's not what I need to focus on. If I'm trying to prep for THL or trying to, get that last, push to finish, the, diamond 5-1 legend climb, and kind of need to focus on that where, you're at a star bonus, wins and losses, you feel those a little bit more, then yeah, I'll focus on, okay, this is a good deck. I'm going to focus on climbing, focus on playing really well, and all those things. And that's where, you still, in my opinion, you still never focus on the record, not while you're playing. But it's something that then you can look at afterwards and be like, I felt like I was playing really well. This, complements that, or maybe I need to look back and see what I can do better tomorrow, type of thing. So I normally go in with a focus for what I want to do, unless it's something like very specific of, I just worked a 12, 13, 14 hour day and just want to play a game. I can play an hour of Hearthstone and, find something that I've played a ton of games on and just kind of chill for a little bit.
And we also add on to that. We also, both Pylet and I, are trying to become better in league match play. We play in the THL, and that's also kind of like it's the same but different, because it's like an entirely different game of how to play and how to get better. Yeah. And because there's a lot of different skill sets there. So
yeah, the rules for winning in those contexts are a bit different than the rules of winning best of one ladder.
Yes. So in addition to this, we talked a little bit about expecting to win, and nobody likes the feeling of losing. That adversity, that feeling of losing, is going to come up, on average every other game, depending on who you are and what you're playing. So Tito, I'll start with you this time. How do you handle that adversity of losing?
Usually I think pretty good. Like I understand. I do get frustrated when I lose, when I'm learning a deck and I'm losing games I know I should win. But for the most part, I try to just keep an even keel. I'm not sure I'm always successful, but I do try to, if I'm losing, I'll switch it up, do a different deck, or I'll try to learn from the mistakes I'm making and, have a little fun at myself when I'm streaming and being like, oh, well, I guess we're just going to keep losing here. But, winning and losing, like, if you lose a matchup, even if it's a 70-30 matchup, that means that matchup you lose 30% of the time, so you got to remember things like that. And it's not necessarily about the plays. It's not about like, hey, my opponent got lucky or whatever. It's like, well, what did I do well in that game? What did I not do well in that game? Maybe I should have played that turtle on 10. I don't know. But it's just like making those decisions and like trying to not make the same mistakes, which I do all the time. But I just try. Losing doesn't bother me that much unless I start losing a lot, because I think then it's probably time to step away from the game. But I don't want to, because I'm having fun, even though I'm not. So,
yeah, Jay.
For me, let's just say I'm not streaming if I'm on my own. If I lose a game, I would say my reaction ranges from, whatever it happens, go next, to a quick, are you kidding me, bro? And then getting my head back in the game. But you got to remind yourself that, Hearthstone, it's honest. The game of Hearthstone is very honest. Sometimes you're going to lose 1 or 10 or 17 games in a row, which I think is like my personal record for consecutive losses. Same with winning. Sometimes you're just going to be on a hot streak. And that's just in the short term. In the short term, your wins and losses, these are just based around your luck. Potentially. But in the long term, you got to remind yourself, unless the rank next to your name consistently says something like rank 1 legend, the reason that you are losing is often because of your behaviors over the long term. Dozens or hundreds or thousands of games. And the game is being very honest with you about whether you're doing the right things or not. Are you queuing the right decks? Are they built well? Are you making the right plays? And if you trust the game to inform you about this, you see other people doing better than you consistently, this is because you know you have room to learn and grow and improve. And I know it's really hard to let that point internalize, because we like to get a little bent out of shape because it's the game that's doing something wrong. It's not us doing something wrong. We're genius, brilliant players, all of us. But I've seen this before where I've had a brief coaching session and someone sent me their Garrote Rogue replays. I asked for the last 5 games they lost just so I could see how they were playing. And each of the 5 games they lost, I think, could have been turned into a win if they had picked up different lines. But it's very frustrating for people because if they can make the correct plays, they can usually spot the correct plays. And if they can't make the correct plays, they also usually can't spot the incorrect ones. So it's understandably frustrating where it can become hard to learn from your losses where you do not know where you're going wrong.
I feel like I've gone almost a little differently in some directions where I've been really successful with the deck initially. Like I'm like 7-2. Pylet went 0-7. He gave it to me. I went 7-2. and then I start thinking, I start to feel like I know the deck. And then I look later and I'm like 10-9. And then I'm like 13-14. And it's like, I think I understood the deck. And so I start making plays like I understand the deck, but no, I'm probably making dumb mistakes now because but it doesn't feel like it because I feel like, oh yeah, I'm good with this deck.
Mr. Rank 1 Legend Rogue, whatever data person that I am, I understand all of this, and I still look at a 7-2 record on my own, and I'm like, oh man, I'm really killing it, I'm the greatest. That part of my brain still exists, and it is very vocal. You have to do a lot to fight back against this. I have actually command on my channel to remind me and other people of this, which is !win rate, which takes you to a link to a tweet from a couple of years ago. Back in Scholomance, I was playing this Steel Dancer Weapon Rogue, and I was tracking my losses and wins across the month. So it's the same deck, it's the same pilot, it's the same meta. And each day I'm playing potentially dozens of games, and the win rate would be like 55%, 40%, 70%, 30%, 52%, 51, 48. It's never this smooth, oh, this deck is a 54% expected win rate and you always win 54% of your games. We're really, really bad at understanding what large numbers mean in the context of probability in Hearthstone. And it's so easy to get baited into winning 10 games and thinking you've made some amazing breakthrough.
And it's also the same, it's not just the large numbers, which obviously they all kind of come down to whatever they're supposed to be, but it's also the meta shifts, right? So I recently started playing the Owl Druid, and I was doing fairly well, and then I started not doing fairly well, and then the meta kind of shifted on me, but like I didn't really kind of process. I'm like, oh, what am I doing wrong now? I mean, I wasn't not playing it perfect, but I definitely was. It was the meta, things shifted around me and I didn't make those adjustments. So it's not always even just that you're good at the deck or bad at the deck. It's like, well, how are your matchups? How are things? Why is things going wrong? Is it just the plays, or is there some kind of other environmental factor that's factoring in? things were shifting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of I had for a couple years a poster up in my classroom talking about, your best each day is going to be different because we're human. And, all I'm ever asking my students for is to just, give their best whatever that is that day. Some days it's going to be a lot more than others, and it's the same here, to where you're going to have days to where you're playing your sharpest that you can that day, and it's not the same as yesterday, and it's not the same as what tomorrow is going to be, and that definitely factors into that day-to-day win rate change. I definitely feel, as someone who's been pretty competitive his whole life, playing sports, just I've always been a competitive person. Losing doesn't get to me as much. I don't like to lose, but I'm quick to brush things off 98% of the time. The other 2% of the time is when I send salty messages to Tito with replays and saying, what is this deck? Why did I just lose to this? Like when I lost to that, imbue priest that had whatever nonsense in their deck, and hit the perfect discovers and whatnot. So sometimes you just need that person that you can, vent to and whatever. So I do the same thing in real life.
So much worse when you're losing to a deck that everyone knows is bad.
Yes.
And it's built poorly. And the game is just slipping through your fingers. And you're like, not like this. Come on, man.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, it's funny what you were saying too, Pylet, is like when I used to play before COVID, when I was playing basketball 2 times a week, there'd be times where things would get chippy. You'd follow each other and you start getting upset with each other. And when you're out there, you're trying to win. You want to win that game. But then, 10 minutes after you're done and you're walking, hey, let's go get a beer later or whatever. It's like, it's contained in that space, mostly. Sometimes it can get a little bit, but for the most part, it's just like you're really trying in that area. You're fighting. You might be upset, but that's just part of that thing. And then when you're done, and nothing's changed. You're good.
Yeah, the losses are never going to feel good, but it's like how bad and for how long do they feel bad? Sometimes you just snap right back in a second. Sometimes it takes a couple minutes or a couple of years. Who knows?
Yeah. So, another part of expectations is what we expect from the game. And I feel like this is definitely a spot where a lot of people get the most salty with. And that is where what you're expecting the game to be doesn't match what the game actually currently is. And how you feel about that is you're entitled to your opinions, obviously. And you might not like current archetypes or current balance or whatever, but that is not something that we have control over as just players of the game. So in that, a lot of times relates to things like archetypes and balance, relates to power creep, which is a pretty big buzzword right now, I know, as well as there's plenty of mechanics that people agree and disagree with. So I don't know how much we want to talk about our opinions on that, but I definitely think we can, that definitely affects how we approach the game and how we think about the game and how enjoyable it is, how much we let that affect us, for sure.
Well, real quick, just on the last topic, how long do you hold on to a loss? You can usually tell with somebody when they play a turn 2 dirty rat. It's like, who hurt you? But yeah, the balance of archetypes is an interesting one because most people tend to gravitate towards a certain style of play. Not everybody, but some people like to. And if you like playing aggro and it's a control meta, you're usually much more unhappy with the game or whatnot. So that definitely affects your kind of mind state, I think. Mechanics too. It was very easy. How often did you get salty about Theotar play? And then a Theotar play.
Every single time I saw it.
Right. So there are some mechanics in the game that definitely affect that as well. I don't know about power creep. Some people... Power creep to me is just whatever. As long as the game's fun and everything works kind of in balance with each other, then I don't care. But other people have very strong opinions on it for some reason, and that's fine. Yeah. So what do you think, Jess?
So when it comes to power creep, believe it or not, I used to be in the camp of people that were afraid of power creep. That this is where I want to talk to people about letting go of bricks. This is where I let go of some of my bricks, which is the game really started getting appreciably more powerful, I would say, around the time of Knights of the Frozen Throne, Kobolds, and Catacombs. And I would say this because there was a Tavern Brawl where I used to be able to play World Championship decks. And the first time it rolled around, it was before this point, and the decks felt reasonably balanced against each other. The second time it rolled around, it was after this point, and you either got a deck with Kobolds cards or you lost. There was definitely a growth in power at that point. And my brain kept screaming at me, this is wrong. This is not what the game should be. I have been playing a different game for X number of years, and something about this game is changing. It shouldn't be this way. We used to play Chillwind Yeti, and now there is this dual-class Chillwind Yeti with Taunt that if you're holding a spell that costs 5 or more, restores health to your hero, and people aren't even playing that. And so what's been going wrong here? And then over time, as I got through this adjustment period, I realized that it's about how the games play out. Do you have something that you really enjoy doing? Is there a decent variety of things floating around out there so that you can find something you love and other people can find things they love, and you're not always playing against or with the same things? Is there just something in the game that's really speaking to you, and can you focus on your plays instead of saying Hearthstone used to be this way 5 years ago and now it's not that way anymore? I was really having a rough adjustment period to all the card generation when that started. I'm not sure if either of you had that same experience, but that feeling of, oh, I can't play around anything because people just keep generating cards, as if I was doing a great job of playing around things to begin with. But now I think card generation is one of the best parts of the game.
Yeah, it's taking advantage of the digital space that Hearthstone has that makes it unique from other games, because it's not like you can run around with all these extra cards that you might be able to generate in Magic and whatnot. That'd be a little crazy. But I think a big part of the power creep too, I think we're kind of taking a tangent, but that's okay. I think a big part of it is that they release, you have six sets that you're always playing or you're playing with, and then the next set has to be impactful enough to make you want to play the new cards over the previous cards, and then again, and then again. And then when something happens, when like the quests don't land, or like the mechanics don't land, or no one's really playing the new cards, then I think that we missed some creep that needed to happen. And like they need to give the Death Knight quest guy taunt so it actually does something. But like, stuff like that, it's like you need to have that kind of cycle. And I really wish they would do, I kind of wish instead of having like a 6-month rotation or whatever, or a 6-set rotation, I would like it to see if it was like a snake where like we got a new set, the last set from the 6 drops and you can keep going. I think that would be a little more interesting, because then you can maintain power or increase power, or I don't know. I think it'd be an interesting way to do it. But I'm not a card designer.
Yeah, it's a series of trade-offs. Do you want the trade-off of, I want new experiences in the game, versus the consequence of that means there's going to be some increase in power because that's why people will play new cards? Or do you want the trade-off of rotating a set out every time you put a set in, which can make synergies break more quickly, but it can also, if you're a new player, you have a harder time keeping up with your collection and the pace of change starts increasing more rapidly. It's all going to be different trade-offs that are differently beneficial to different groups of people.
And at least with Hearthstone, the pets are $150, not the cards like Snap. Anyway, Pylet, go ahead.
Yeah, it is an interesting, just spot that they, to consider, because I think Hearthstone has kind of intentionally set itself up to where, as a card game, it wants to be, when a new set launches, they want to introduce new decks more than push old decks that were missing a couple pieces. They obviously always have some cards that are either just, generically powerful, or, are kind of that last little push for something that, was tier 3-4. Now it has those last couple of pieces to fill out and, possibly be more competitive. And I I haven't played as much for other card games lately. When I played Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh as a kid, I didn't know what anything was. I didn't know what was good and what wasn't. We just played at the kitchen table with my brothers. But playing Lorcana and seeing them be in the second year and kind of go through some of those identity things of there's stuff from the first year to where it's just like these cards are just absolutely busted and in every single deck of that ink color. And if you don't have it, you're handicapping yourself because you don't have this busted card. But a lot of what you see for the top decks, it's these decks building on themselves from what they were 1, 2, 3, 4 sets ago. And the past couple ones, they've tried to introduce sets of cards with a lot of synergies, like we talked about with World 8 last week or whenever it was. And those decks haven't hit. And it shows how difficult it is to take something and make a deck appear in the meta out of thin air. Because you have to give it a lot of support or it has to be really, really strong. And there's people who don't like either of those. And you're going to, make some section of the player base angry with whatever decision you make. So that's it makes it to where it's a really interesting spot because I'm sure that it makes the devs often feel like, it's in a lose-lose, when they're trying to design these. And then, I felt like for this set, they went a very creative route with decks, but the power wasn't there. So as creative as they were, they didn't land, and they're all 40% at best. So, being able to, like Tito said, I think we've kind of strayed in a different direction, but that's fine. But it makes it very, very difficult to, not only design the game in that way, but then approach the game for how do you want to set yourself up for what you want to play.
Yeah, I'm really actually glad you brought that up because there's this point I've been talking about recently on the Cycle Rogue nerf. That Cycle Rogue, it's a really interesting case study in card design, where you've heard, I'm sure, a bunch of people occasionally complain about parasitic design from time to time. That you have, let's say in Stormwind, the SI7 Rogue Quest, where you want to play a bunch of SI7 minions and they all go in this one deck and they don't go in any other decks and they all just have synergy with each other and nothing else. And some people really don't like that because they feel like deck building is on the rails and they're constrained, and I understand that complaint very well because I've felt that myself too. But when you have something like SI7 Quest Rogue, it's really easy to create a new experience that wasn't there before and ensure that that experience isn't going to be too good for the next expansion or 2 or 5, because if you just don't print cards that say SI7 on them, it's not getting any better. Compare that to Cycle Rogue, where your payoff is in drawing cards. This is very generic, this is very open-ended, and so now Cycle Rogue went through an iteration with Gaslight Gatekeeper, and that got nerfed. It went through an iteration with Robocaller, and Everything Must Go ended up getting nerfed. It went through an iteration of Webweaver, and Webweaver got nerfed, and now it's getting nerfed again because you got new support in something like Platosaur and Cultist Map. So if you have this very open-ended design, you do risk potentially keeping the experiences the same and ramping up the power on something above and beyond what new experience you want people to have. And again, there's not like there's a solution here. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just you trade one off against the other.
We've taken a tangent, and sometimes we can control it, sometimes we can't. So what's our next subject on this?
Yeah, I think that is a good tangent because it does. How you feel about those things affects how you approach the game, and that's what we're talking about here.
Ostensibly,
but speaking of control, I think we talked about this with Dragon Rider last time we talked about mindset, because we were talking about growth mindset, and some of that goes with what can you control versus what you can't control, and that's another thing where people fall into traps, and it very quickly leads to tilt, to where there are things in the game that you can control. You can control what plays you make. You can control how you react to things. You can control what decks you play, when you play, how much you play. All those things you have control over. Anything that involves you clicking the buttons, you have control over those. You cannot control how the game's designed, what we just talked about. What your opponent does, or what your RNG is like sometimes. You know, you cannot control your top decks. You cannot control your opponent's top decks. All those different things. And I think that that's a spot where a lot of people, in not just in Hearthstone, this is a life thing of people definitely fall into that trap of we get focused on those things that we can't control and those things that are outside of our control, and we let it affect us.
I mean, to be fair, they printed a priest card that lets you control your top deck by putting your card that costs the most in your hand on your top deck, and no one plays it, so no one wants that control. So one thing about this, like, so I had a match last week about in THL, and I was playing, I believe, Starship Warlock versus. I was playing one of the Starship decks versus the Buff Hunter, the Scam Hunter, and I lost, and it was an unfavorable matchup. And we just kind of like, everyone. I talked to you afterwards. It was like, yeah, you were just going to lose this matchup and whatever. And I then took it to coaching, and we looked at it, and there was a line that I could have taken that would have won, or potentially would have won, or would have extended the game and put me in a good position because I would have got my starships launched. I would have staved off whatever. I could have whatever. So I think part of that is sometimes you think you can't control something and you let that affect the things you can. So if you just go into a match, again, 30% win rate means that you win 3 out of 10 times, or at least the deck does. So you have to remember that when you do. Oh, I think we just lost Pylet. Hopefully he comes back. What do you, apparently we cannot control Pylet's
or his hillbilly internet. Yes.
Or his hillbilly internet. What about you? What do you think about things you control and things you can't?
So this is actually really interesting in that there are a lot of people that will say Hearthstone is just, it's all luck, it's all random, I can't control these outcomes. And believe it or not, I don't think those people are actually expressing a crazy sentiment. I just think they don't have the full picture yet. And for many people, to them, the game is really a lot about randomness. And they're not crazy. What they're seeing is a natural consequence of skill-based matchmaking. This is just the way matchmaking works in Hearthstone. It tries to pair you against someone of equivalent skill, and if the matchmaking system is working, it's doing that very well. And ironically, what happens when you start matching players on skill level is that their skill stops explaining their outcomes in the game. Because if you are just as good as the opponent on the other side of the board, but wins and losses aren't being distributed evenly here, the constant feature skill is not explaining the variable of the wins and losses. Proportionately, if you have two people of the same skill level, random chance is actually explaining more of their loss. The part of it that they kind of miss out on here is what happens when you break skill-based matchmaking. Because that's where really you begin to appreciate how much skill expression there is in Hearthstone, how much you can control. And what happens here, if you break skill-based matchmaking, if you let players from anywhere queue into players from anywhere else, we know what happens because it's what happens to the good players in the pre-release Tavern Brawls, where across something like 200 games, I think I had between an 80 and a 90% win rate. And this is fairly consistent across the past couple of these brawls that I've been a part of. There is so much that you can control, but a lot of people just aren't quite at the skill level to understand what they are capable of controlling in the first place. And so that they're not crazy when they say this, but they simply do not know what they don't know yet. And that can be a good thing for people because it means there's a whole world out there that you can learn and explore and improve at. But at the same time, as you learn and explore and improve, you will queue into people who have been doing likewise. And again, the skill-based matchmaking will even out the skill factor, and losses will start to feel a bit more like luck than what you're doing. But there's definitely so much in there you can control, otherwise it would be impossible to reach those types of win rates.
That kind of reminds me, so a couple weeks ago we had Ron Mexico and Pocket Train on, and Pocket was talking about a loss he had in the Masters Tour that just happened, and he was saying, "Well, I probably could have thought about this differently or this differently." I forget exactly what he said, but he was going over the things he could have controlled. And then Ron was like, "This is what I love about Pocket Train is that like his draw sucked. Like any other player would be like." My drawing sucked, like and whatnot, and but Pocket just focus on hey what he can control and all that. So I think that's dead on.
Yeah, Pocket is really, really good at doing this, where he explores what he could have done better and he really thinks deeply about it. What I think a lot of people start doing, and again, I would include myself in this, I think we all do it to some degree, is there's this one part of our brain that's thinking about our plays, and there's another part of our brain that's thinking about how are we going to justify this loss to someone else as if it's not our fault, so we can deflect any personal blame. And the more you're focused on this second task, the more mental energy is going towards it, the less energy is probably going towards the first one. So if you're trying to already make excuses for where the loss was, I queued a bad matchup, I was expecting to lose this anyway, I can't do anything here, you're really, in a way, it's almost like you're trying to make that outcome happen. Because if there was something you could do differently, and you prove yourself wrong about there being nothing you can do, well, then you end up looking kind of silly. You end up looking like you don't know what you're talking about. So if you can in some way justify your anger at a loss or the game going not your way, as there was nothing that you could do, you might try to make it the reality that there's nothing you're even looking to do.
Yeah. My internet cut out halfway through that conversation, so I'll just say that was, I'm going to assume that all that was most, intelligent, best advice I've ever heard, and we'll go from there.
Your internet is something we cannot control.
Yeah, it is. So my hillbilly internet. Yeah, I definitely, that's the can and can't control is something that I focus on a lot. Not only, in Hearthstone, but as a teacher, especially as a band director, and trying to get my students to focus on being in the right spot mentally to perform. I know, I think it was last summer or during the last school year, I had read, and it was at the recommendation of my college band director, the inner game of tennis, and it focuses a lot on, focusing on the skills and the execution, not the outcomes, and the mental games that go with that, and keeps it broad enough to where you can apply it across different things. And I definitely saw a lot of that with, he made a comparison of if you plant a tree or a flower or whatever, and you're trying to will it to grow and force it to grow faster and force it to become this big beautiful thing quicker than it's actually going to, you're not going to get very far. You're not going to change that very easily, at least. And being able, we do that with ourselves so often of, I need to be better at this right now. I need to figure out how to be better at this deck. I need to make better plays right now, and that doesn't happen. And giving yourself the grace.
No, usually you will need days, weeks, especially if you're not already well versed in how to improve across the board. You will need a long time to master these skills and figure out what actually is under your control. And if you're the type of player that wants to go back and look over your replays and say, okay, what were my options this turn? How might the next turn have looked if I had done this or that? That can go a long way, though I suspect a lot of players don't necessarily want to invest that type of time into improving.
Yes, for sure. And then next kind of topic with this, and Jay, I'm going to pass this off to you first, because this was an idea that you brought up about how a lot of times there is confusion when we have conversations about different elements and different terminology that we use related to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people, they say a lot of stuff, and they use words that they have heard before. But the real problem in a lot of these conversations is that the person who's speaking and the person who is receiving the words don't share a definition as for what these words mean. One example that comes to mind is that I've heard a lot of people say something like, I just want to play a game of Hearthstone where I'm in this kind of board-based mid-range meta, and there's not a lot of mana cheating, and there's not a lot of burst damage, and there are no scam decks floating around, whatever verbs you want to use to describe these things, whatever adjectives you want to use to describe these things. And then this expansion rolls around, and Quest Murloc Paladin is extremely popular, which is exactly the deck they described. And then all of a sudden, that's not actually what they wanted, and it's a problem because actually there's this toxic play pattern here, or whatever new buzzword kind of arrives into their mind, and people aren't talking about specifically what are the experiences you want to have, what are you trying to accomplish. And in this realm, when it comes to improving, the biggest, most nefarious term I can think of is the words win condition. Win condition is one of the most easy ways you can tunnel vision yourself from asking how can I win this game to what is the way I need to win this game. So this happened a lot with Garrote Rogue, one of the more skill testing decks in Hearthstone's history. What made it that way is that it could flip between different plans. It had a late game burst plan with Garrote, which the deck was named after, and so a lot of people thought my win condition is that I need to burst them down with damage from Garrote and spell damage. And what they never thought to do was, on turn 1, develop a minion. And then on turn 2, develop another minion. And just contest the board, and then worry about getting cards later. Because if you're contesting the board, this is bridging you into later stages of the game. It's applying pressure to your opponent. Their life total's going down. Now your Garrotes need to potentially do less damage if you want to finish them off that way. Or maybe you can just take over the board. But once someone gets it in their head that I am a control deck, and therefore the way I need to win every single game is by trying to remove all of my opponent's threats and gaining life until they run out of every card, until they're down to their very last card, and I take that away from them and they are forced to concede because there's nothing left in their tank. This is how I need to win the game. And then they print Kill Jaden. And you just sit there, what are they doing? How can they make such terrible design decisions? And what happened there is that you just tunnel visioned on a very specific way that you felt you needed to win the game. You forgot about any other ways you might, and then you just started aggravating yourself, and usually you fail to see other lines of play that actually guide you to where you need to be. The opponent dies when their life total goes to 0. You have a bunch of tools in your belt, figure out a way of getting their life total to 0. Don't play this sub-game of how do I destroy all my opponent's stuff? How do I take away their win condition? How do I prevent their deck from working? Think about how do I execute my strategy? What are my different strategies? Which strategy do I need to apply in this matchup in general? And then how do I switch that based on the situation I'm in? The less you think about win conditions and the more you think about broad strategies you can move between and how you do that, the better it's going to be for your performance.
Going back to real quick, how long you hold on to a loss, I'm going to hold on to that. Pylet had 2 Steam Cleaners played against him the other day. Someone hurt that person real bad. I agree and I disagree a tiny bit. Like, I think holding on to the idea of the win condition is important in the way that when you start a matchup, you say, well, what was my win condition? What is their win condition? How are they going to win the game? How am I going to win the game? And like when I took the biggest jump, I think ever I think I made 2 real big jumps in my play at one point or another. And it was when I learned that, hey, I don't need to hold this card for value because it's not going to get me there because I'm going to be dead before I can play the card. So instead of waiting to play that 4/5, that I'm going to have to combo with something else or play a spell or whatnot, get on the board. And because the way I'm winning this matchup, yes, my deck is technically control in this situation, but they're more control-y than I am. So I am now, as they say, the beatdown. So I need to play more aggressive. I need to get, like you were saying, get on the board. I need to push things because knowing what my win condition is and knowing that that's not going to be effective, I have to do something different. So let's do something different. And knowing what their win condition is and saying, well, does my thing beat their thing? Typically, no. Then how do I change my perspective and fit that round peg into the square hole or whatnot, and make like I was saying, that match I had last week, I could have won had I not just thought, hey, they're going to just run me over because they have the big minions on turn 3 and there's nothing I can do about it. There were things I can do about it. So I think thinking about thinking about win conditions is important, just not how do I get to that win condition. I think it's a good idea to figure out what are the win conditions, are they valid, are they not, what are they going to do, and whatnot.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more about, are you focusing on, is this card my win condition versus this strategy and general plan is my win condition. I think when people focus in too much on, I have to win with this card, Owl Druid, I think is a good current example. It's in the name of the deck. I have to play Owl and then burst in there. No, you don't. Sometimes you just make a bunch of 2/5 taunts and you hit them in the face until a couple swipes does it for you. I did that plenty. I think when I was learning the deck, I think the first 5 games I didn't see Owl. I never drew Owl and I went 5-0. So being able to focus on, this is how I get from where we're starting the game to where I end the game in a winning position. What are my plays that get me there? Sometimes it is a very specific card or combo because that's what the matchup calls for. It's a Death Knight or a warrior or whatever, and yeah, you need that Owl spell damage to get there. Yeah, you have to focus on that. If it's an aggro deck, I just swipe, clear their stuff, and I keep applying pressure until I do enough. I think looking at aggro decks is a spot where I think that's a good way to talk about it too, to where aggressive decks, there's not 1 or 2 cards typically that are your win conditions. It's just I play stuff, I hit them in the face, I do what I need to do to keep applying constant pressure and setting myself up to do that constant damage and put them in a really bad spot consistently, and finding the way to do that rather than focusing in on I have to have this card.
Like if you're playing Wheel Lock, right? If you're playing Wheel Lock and you're playing against like that aggro paladin that's out there now that puts, plays wisps and all the cheap minions and crusade, like your win condition isn't wheel. Your win condition is I'm gonna keep keeping them off the board or contesting the board and keeping them off the board until they have no cards because they don't have any reload or very little reload, and then they concede. That's your win condition. So any more thoughts on that, Jay?
In general, I like the idea of thinking about just your strategies and the clock of the game. But overall, I would say if you can just think about the clock and your strategy and how does it match into your opponent's strategy, you're going to do way better than thinking about any specific thing you need to pursue all the time.
And it's weird because we keep calling you Jay, and Pylet calls me Jay, and my name's Jay. No people know me as Tito, but it's weird because it's like I was like, "Hey, and Jay, what do you think?" And I'm like, "Oh wait, not me."
So, brings us to our last little topic here about it. Kind of broad overview of what we've been talking about is what is our focus on when we play. Kind of talked about this with the first point, but a lot of times when we go in with a focus and the correct mindset because of that, are we playing for fun, to learn, to win, to not lose? What's our focus when we play, and how does that affect our enjoyment of the game? So, Jay, I'll pass it off to you first.
So when it comes to me, what I'm always focusing on in these games is what is the fun thing that I get to do? What is the strategy that I'm looking to pursue? How do I pursue it as powerfully, as quickly, as decisively, as focused as I can? And I'm really focused on what is my fun in all of this experience. And I like to separate that from what I've seen in other cases where someone has a really myopic focus on what is the opponent doing? How do I prevent their thing from existing? How do I stop their plan from working? And because there are some things you can control and there are some things that you can't in life, you can control what goes into your deck. You can control what your plays are. You don't get to tell your opponent what decks they're allowed to queue up, what cards they're allowed to play. And the more you are focusing on their plan and dreading what they're going to do, the less fun you're going to be able to pull out of the interesting, exciting thing that you have, whether you win with it or not, you can still get that little victory. But really, focus on your game plan first. Where do you find your joy? And then really lean into that as hard as you can without trying to focus so much on whether other people agree with you. Because you got to remember, you are your opponent's opponent in all of this. And your opponent can't just be a target dummy for you to sit there and do your fun thing while they eat loss after loss. They're going to stop playing. So you have to be your opponent's opponent, and they're going to try to pressure you. You're going to try to pressure them. That's the whole fun back and forth of the game. And so just focus on the bits of that you like doing and really figure out how to do them well.
I think my focus shifts, and that's okay. Because I have the goal of, like we said, becoming a better Hearthstone player. And why do I want to become a better Hearthstone player? Because I want to play people. I want to play people I know. I want to improve, because improvement's fun. Getting better at something's fun for me. Also, I stream. I'm a very small streamer, typically between 10 and 5 people. We're trying to grow, whatever. What helps me grow is having a smaller number. So part of my goal is to get better, to get the smaller number, but also I get on there and I just want to have fun. So then part of my goal is to have fun. And so it kind of shifts. And as long as I'm okay with the shifting and at times being able to refocus on things, that's fine. Like I was playing the Owl Druid, and the entire point is to learn how to play this deck and play it well. The location, the Admiracil, whatever you call it. One other thing I need to get better at is saying Midrasil. I can't say the names of like 90% of Hearthstone cards. It's fine. But it drew me, it generated a Lore Master Cho for me. So then the game became completely different. Did I play optimally to win? No. Did I say, I have Lore Walker Cho, we're going to do some fun things? Yes. And we just tried to make silly things happen. And it was a derivative of what I meant to do. And that was fine. And then I refocused. So as long as you can, my focus shifts, as long as you understand why your focus is shifting and you're okay with the shifting in focus, that's fine. Just be ready to refocus when you need to or when you want to. And as long as you're having fun and trying to remember that Hearthstone is a game. Games are supposed to be fun. Where I've heard that before, I don't remember. But yeah, like the focus can shift, and that's fine. Just be aware of what your focus is at the moment. And if you're having fun and you've lost the focus, it doesn't matter. You're having fun. This is a game.
Yeah, 100%. I think I talked about it and said it a lot the very first episode that I was on, to where I'm a big believer in find the fun. Whatever fun is for you in the client, and that's why Hearthstone is a game that I can keep coming back to, because I'm also someone to where I play most of the modes. If I'm not enjoying Constructed, I'll go to Battlegrounds, I'll go to Arena. I can find fun in the client, and it keeps me hitting the play button and opening the game. And I know not everyone is like that.
Don't forget duels. Don't forget twist. Wait, never mind.
Well, yeah.
Sorry.
So I miss duels. So, so I mean, that with the player I am, that helps me. But I do think that that's in the end, especially when it comes to mindset, that is probably one of the most important things. Is you have to find what makes the game fun for you, because you started playing it because it was fun. All right, most of us don't jump in and sink hours and hours and hours into something that's not fun unless it's paying us. So, and that's a different conversation. But
Hearthstone does not pay.
So, Hearthstone is not that thing, and you started playing the game for a reason. You'll remember what that is.
You got any final thoughts, Jay, before we wrap this up?
Nope, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Well, we're not completely done. We have one more interview question for you. What is your favorite dessert?
Oof. If I'm talking about a restaurant dessert, it's probably going to be a creme brulee. If I'm talking about an everyday honest man's dessert, it's those 3-color marzipan Italian rainbow cookies.
Those are good. So I really need to come up with like a script here because I kind of go off the rails kind of on this, but like, if you guys like the show, tell somebody, just tell one other person, especially if they like Hearthstone. If they don't like Hearthstone, they're probably not going to want to listen. But if they do like Hearthstone, we have awesome guests like our Jesse Alexander today. And I don't think we've had a bad guest on yet, at least in my opinion. So that's out of 130 episodes. I think we've had guests on 128. If we haven't interviewed your favorite personality or streamer, we probably can. So let us know. And I'll tell you if they told us no or not, because we get there. So today we are trying something new. If the audio sounds different, I won't know if it will. But one of the things we do is we have guests on every week, and a lot of times is, hey, can you download Audacity and can you record on your own side and whatnot? So we've started as of today, because Pylet finally got his internet fixed, or at least kind of fixed. He went out once today. But we signed up for a service that's going to let us, just instead of trying to do this all on Discord, we can just send the guest the link and say, hey, just put your webcam in, put your mic in, and let's go. And it gives us some power to do some things and hopefully make some extra content and stuff like that. So that, anything we can do with that, that's why we have a Patreon at Bread and Butter HS on Patreon, and anything else, and you can join for free. But we also give out the raw audio early, so you'll be hearing this tonight if it's on Tuesday the 5th. If you're a patron already, we have a members channel on Discord where if you want to help shape the show, like where you can say, hey, you guys are having on Jesse Alexander, I really want to ask him about his favorite Italian cookie, you can. So that's just it. Jesse, where can people find you on the social medias?
I usually hang around Discord, Twitter, Twitch, and frequently Reddit as well. I can drop you some links to those for anyone curious.
Sure. How about yourself, Pylet?
You can find me mainly on Discord at Pylet712, that's Pylet, and you can also find me on Twitter at the same handle.
And you can find me on Tito Santana HS on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and anywhere else fine Italian goods are sold. Jesse, do you have anything you'd like to promote this week, or any shout-outs you'd like to make?
I guess the one thing is that Gamers Outreach reached out to me, as they do, for another charity stream coming up later in October. So I'm going to go ahead and doing that, trying to get some video games for kids in hospitals. And if anyone wants to go ahead and start saving up now for any donations on that stream in October, put that money away. Get it in a sock somewhere.
And it doesn't get interest in the sock, but yeah, keep it safe. Pylet, how about yourself?
Kind of shout out and promote. If you especially enjoyed this episode, we've had a couple others about mindset throughout Bread and Butter's recording, and then I know Coin Conceit has also had a few about mindset, but one especially that they reference back when they had I think it's Jared Tendler. I think I have the name right there. The author of Mental Game of Poker. I can't remember the episode title offhand, but it's an older episode. I'm sure if you ask in that Discord, then someone will post the link pretty quickly because people reference that one a lot. But there's a lot out there if you want some other thoughts and opinions on kind of helping improve your mindset and mental game.
And I'm going to shout out both Alkali for coming in to a very difficult job and already doing awesome so far as we can see. And shout out to Hat one last time. Pour one out for Hat because we're going to miss you. One last note: you did mention how you looked yourself up, and you never want to look yourself up on the internet. It's weird. Whenever I look myself up, apparently I'm an '80s wrestler. But anyway, guys, we're toast. We'll see ya.
See ya.
You have a good one.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.